And welcome back, boxing fans, to another show, the Oscar Show, Boxing Around the Ring. First thing first, we're going to get into Errol Spence rematching Terence Crawford at the welterweight division and not at 154, the middleweight division. So, let's get into it. Why would Errol Spence rematch Crawford at 154 when there would be nothing on the line besides pride? Now, don't get me wrong, that is enough. Sometimes you just want your get back. But I don't think that the weight drain or weight was a problem from Errol. I think the problem was that Terence was just a smarter fighter in the ring that day. Ain't no wrong with it. Sometimes it happens, especially if you have been getting away with what you've been getting away with for years. And Errol Spence, we've seen him get away with bullying guys for, a long time. And he went in there with that same mind frame for Crawford, and that didn't work out too well for him, Honestly, I didn't think that Errol would approach the situation like that, but he did, and with that being said, hopefully he, has learned and he's reevaluating how to approach this fight, because that approach is definitely not going to work. Even if he perfected that approach, which I do think, he should perfect a few things. Like I said, he was getting away with this style before facing Terence Crawford. So, that might be a negative, or it could be a positive if he is able to, perfect it and implement that style some way, against Terence Crawford. I don't know how he would get that type of style to be effective against Terence Crawford, but I'm not a boxing coach. Maybe his coach can develop a plan to be able to use that style sometime and then switch it up to another style. But yeah, with that being said, like I said, I don't think the rematch is going to be at 154. I mean, there's just not enough on the line besides pride. I think 147 will be where Errol Spence rematches Terence Crawford, welterweight division for undisputed. And that would make the fight bigger. If he was to rematch Crawford at 154, that might dilute the fight. It just might dilute those sales, Those sales might not reach anywhere near the first fight. Seems like a lot of people are already reluctant to buy the fight, period, which I don't understand. These are two great fighters. I'm buying it. I think you never know what can happen in that boxing ring, especially if you're a fan of boxing and you're a fan of Errol Spence and Terence Crawford. I don't get it. If you know your history, then you know that there's a possibility that Errol could pull out, a victory in the second fight, no matter what you think. But I do think the fight will be at 147 in the welterweight division. And if I'm right, y'all owe me. Y'all owe me something. Because there's a lot of people out there still talking crazy. And I don't understand it. I just don't get it. Like, Errol shouldn't be, going after the rematch in the first place. But neither here nor there. I do think that they will be rematching at 147 for all the belts, undisputed. Now, what I have been noticing is that Terence has been on a tear with these interviews. I mean, he's been on all the shows from The Breakfast Club to Joe Rogan. And rightfully so, rightfully so. He deserves those flowers. He's accomplished a lot. He was overlooked by some for a while. And I do like how humble Terence Crawford is in his victory over Errol Spence. And he's always saying, like, hey, I'm going to honor the rematch because Errol Spence gave me the opportunity. and this wouldn't have been done really without him. So I'm going to honor my rematch clause that I have with him. Those are Terence Crawford's words, and you got to respect that. You got to respect that. An honorable fighter, hopefully there's not a time, clause on that rematch, which there very well may be. Usually there is. And if there is, hopefully Errol Spence activates that rematch in time. But yeah, I like Terence Crawford's, interviews as far as how he conducts himself. He really answers all those questions, the right way. If you want to call it the right way. I just like how he's humble in his victory over Errol Spence. He gives Errol Spence his credit. He's got some great, point of views about, the boxing game and the promoters, just some of the things he's saying, like, how the promoters hold these fighters back so that they don't reach a certain pinnacle and get to a point where they really don't need them or they can do business without them. And I kind of agree with Terence Crawford. Well, not kind of, but I do agree with Terence Crawford. I think promoters can be good for the game and they can also be bad for the sport. If you're in there and you're trying to make as much money as you can on the promoter side, to fatten your pockets because, you're just trying to treat these fighters like, like they're yours. And they're not. You're the fighters. You belong to the fighter, basically. You're the fighter's asset. You're there to help the fighter handle things that he doesn't really have time for, or maybe that's not his area of expertise. That's what you're there for. You're there to assist the fighter and help the fighter in areas that, that he's not an expert in or has the time to, take care of that type of stuff. He's got to train, that's enough as it is. So I do agree with Terence Crawford on that. Now, I do think, like I said, promoters can be good for the game. They can be very good for the sport. They have to just do what's best for the fighter and give the fighters what they want. I'm not saying you should just, get ran over yourself as a promoter. But I am saying that you are there to be an asset to the fighter. You're not a coach, right? You're not a coach. So Terence Crawford has been, doing interviews all over the place. And like I said, rightfully so. He does deserve his flowers, right now. He's been deserved them. But after his performance against Errol Spence, you got to give it to the man. You got to give him credit. He lumped him up. And that's not a knock on Errol. I'm not trying to dish Errol by saying it like that. But that's just what happened, He smacked him around the ring. And I think Errol is going to use that for motivation when it comes to training. And I think he's going to come back with a vengeance. When fighters take a loss like that, they usually come back with full force and with something to prove. I don't think Errol felt like he had anything to prove. I just feel like Terence was the only one who felt like he had something to prove. Errol was receiving his flowers and Terence wasn't. Everyone was calling Errol Spence the greatest or the next Floyd, things like that, especially after, the rumors and that were going around about Errol Spence training session or should I say sparring session with Floyd Mayweather. They said that Errol got the best of Floyd Mayweather, or at least he handled his own against Floyd Mayweather in their sparring session. So that right there was enough to stroke his ego in a sense where he just felt like he was on top and wasn't nobody could touch him out there. And he kept approaching the fight the same way over and over. Just, I'm going to run through you. I'm going to run through you because of that confidence that he got from training, or should I say sparring with Floyd Mayweather Jr., and everybody was calling him the great, and the next, and, just things that was boosting his ego up. And Not saying he didn't deserve those things, but we probably should just look at the fact that Errol wasn't feeling like he had anything to prove, like I said, and Terence definitely felt like he had something to prove and like he wasn't getting his just due for the things he accomplished. And that's just what it is. And like I said, give Terence Bud Crawford his flowers. You know, you got to give it up to the man. He performed at a supreme level against Errol Spence, and he showed, you know, it's levels to this. Now, I just feel like physically, I think Errol Spence can keep up, but mentally, that's where Terence Crawford has him. You know, he's just a smarter fighter, or he was that night at least. He was definitely a smarter fighter. When you go back and you look at those previous fights and you compare, you know, the way Terence fought and the way Errol Spence fought their opponents, you can definitely see one was thinking and another, you know, just adjusting and just, you know, having to, you know, switch it up and use different methods to get the job done. Whereas the other fighter, Errol Spence, was able to use, you know, like they said, a hammer and get the job done. So he used one tool, and that's the only tool he ever needed. But that doesn't mean he can't learn to use other tools. Now, a lot of people are saying, oh, he ain't going to be able to learn to do that in 6 months, you know, and all that. Listen, y'all not fighters. You don't know what Errol can do. That's just your opinion. It's all just everyone's opinion. But you have no idea what Errol Spence is capable of. So let's not go there and let's wait and see. How about that? How about we wait and see what Errol shows us in the rematch? Because if he comes out and he beats Terence, all y'all gonna look stupid. You're gonna look crazy like you don't know what the hell you're talking about. So I think you should just keep quiet when it comes to Errol's ability to adapt. You don't know. Nobody does. You have only seen him fight a certain way. Those of you, you know, who have watched some of Errol Spence's fights, but I've seen him fight. You know, when he fought Mikey Garcia, I felt like he done a great job of boxing. So I know he can box. His timing was just off against Terence Crawford that day. He was weak and he was getting hit in the back of the head. I'm not saying that Terence Crawford was trying to hit him in the back of the head. Sometimes, you know, you throw and the person just turns their head or whatever, you know, that just happens, or the timing of it. So Errol's equilibrium got thrown off and he never recovered from that. So we're going to see a different Errol Spence in the rematch. You know, just like Wilder when he fought Tyson Fury, you know, he got hit behind the ear and he never really recovered after that. Same thing with AJ when he fought Andy Ruiz. He got hit, you know, behind the ear and he never recovered after that. But he came back to beat Andy Ruiz. Wilder came back to perform very well against, you know, Tyson Fury. But again, when you get hit, you know, behind the head or, you know, get your equilibrium thrown off, it's hard to recover. So we don't know what Errol is going to bring to the table in the second fight, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be entertaining. I'm pretty sure. And I do believe it's going to be at 147 for the undisputed welterweight, you know, champion of the world. Now, there's a few things that stood out to me when I watched these interviews with Terence Bud Crawford, you know, all over the place. Like I said, yes, he deserves his flowers, and you know, he should have been, you know, getting these type of accolades and recognition for, you know, his performances. It's not his fault that he made these really good fighters look average. You know, we've seen that before with the Mayweather effect. We've even seen that going back to Ali. I mean, Ali was making some really good fighters look average, and that's what it is. Roy Jones Jr., he was making really good fighters look average, and hey, that's just a testament to those guys' his ability and, you know, talent. But one thing I will say is that there is some hypocrisy from these fighters. And I noticed something when Terence Crawford said, hey, finally I'm getting my recognition, right? I've been calling these guys out for the longest, right? They said Errol Spence was the boogeyman. These are Crawford's words. They said Errol Spence was the boogeyman, and I'm chasing him, so how is he the boogeyman? Well, this seems to be the same situation over and over and over, right? Let's look at Errol Spence and Keith Thurman. Errol Spence was coming up, calling out Keith Thurman. And Keith Thurman used the same excuse. Who is this guy? The risk is not worth the reward. You know, the risk outweighs the reward. All these things, you know, to just like not do the fight, basically. Now, not necessarily Errol, but when a fighter does get the chance and they fight someone, they tend to use the same excuse that was used on them that they didn't like on the next up and coming great fighter. Thus, Jaron Boots Ennis. Y'all know what I'm talking about. When they asked Terence Crawford, hey, are you going to fight Jaron Boots Ennis? What is his response? And don't lie. Don't fool yourself. You heard what he said. Oh, I'm looking for bigger and better fights, big money fights. All those excuses that they didn't like other fighters using against them, they always use on the next up and coming great fighter. And I'm tired of that. If you chasing greatness, you chasing greatness. Period. You've already got the money. You got it already. If you just looking for, you know, big fights, that's not chasing greatness anymore. If you're just looking for big money fights, that's not chasing greatness anymore. That's just looking for money. So just come out and say that. Just come out and say, hey, I'm just looking for money. That's it. That's all. But don't try to, you know, use those same excuses that other fighters used on you and you didn't like it. And you called these fighters out for it. But then you go and do the same thing. That doesn't make sense to me. It's hypocrisy over and over and over. Jaron Boots Ennis is calling out Errol Spence and Terence Crawford, and he has been for a while now. Ever since he got to the 147 division, he's been calling these guys out, and they won't give him the fight because the risk outweighs the reward, according to them. But we all know danger sells. Danger sells. There is danger in the fight with Terence Crawford and Jaron Boots Ennis, right? So therefore, you can't say it's not a big money fight when it is a big money fight. If you were to fight Jaron Boots Ennis, I'm pretty sure that fight would sell about, you know, somewhere around the same as Terence Crawford and Errol Spence's fight. If Terence Bud was to fight, you know, if Terence Bud Crawford was to fight Jaron Boots Ennis, that fight would do well. It just would, because of the fact that we just seen what Terence Crawford did to Errol Spence. And if he does it again in the second fight, then the Jaron Boots Ennis fight looks even better. Now it's about when, you know, should he fight Jaron Boots Ennis, as he is also calling out Jermell Charlo. Obviously, we would like to see Terence Crawford versus Jermell Charlo if the timing is right first. That's just a fact. Jermell Charlo is a beast. If Jermell Charlo is successful in beating Canelo Alvarez, which he has a good chance, but hey, let's keep it real. Canelo has knocked out every fighter that, you know, came up to face him from a lower division. from Amir Khan to, you know, any other fighter. I just don't think it's I don't think that, you know, it's something that we should overlook. Okay, I think that when that fight is all said and done, whether, you know, we see Jamel win by knockout or by, you know, points, that would be a great victory if Jamel can get the job done. Obviously, he's gonna have to beat him twice. If he does do that, then I would like to see him face Crawford. I know Tim Tszyu is waiting, and Jamel might, you know, be stripped of one of his belts, and that belt will be given to Tim Tszyu, I believe. And if Tim Tszyu gets that belt, then Tim Tszyu, you know, he's gonna have to wait for Jermell Charlo to finish the fights with Canelo if Jermell Charlo was to win the first fight. But if Jermell loses the first fight, then Jermell has a choice. Hey, do I go to Tim Tszyu's, you know what I mean, for a fight, or do I go to Crawford for a fight? I think between the two, the more difficult fight obviously would be Crawford. Let's just keep it real. The Tim Tszyu fight, obviously he's got a huge backing, being from Australia, but I do think the more difficult fight would be with Terence Crawford. But these fights do have to make sense when you look at the belts and things like that. But going back to what I said, I still believe that, you know, the hypocrisy in boxing needs to stop. It's just getting absurd. Let's stop pretending like this isn't happening. Fighters call out other elite fighters. When they're at the bottom, they're calling out the top. And then when they get to a point in their career at the top, they do the same to upcoming fighters that are behind them. And they didn't like it when it was done to them. And they use it as some sort of knock on fighters that did it to them. And then they go and do the same thing. So that's just very hypocritical to me, and I think that needs to stop. But I can't wait to see the rematch. I think it's going to be a good rematch. If Terence Crawford does beat Errol Spence a second time, I think that he should go to whatever is available as a challenge after that victory, because Jermell Charlo, he's going to be tied up with Canelo should he win the first one. If he doesn't win the first one, obviously he'll be open, for a fight, and that timing could lock up pretty good for him and Terence Crawford to fight. That would be pretty good, because then it would make sense belts wise, right? But what if Jermell Charlo beats Canelo the first fight? Then what should Terence Crawford do? If he beats Errol Spence in the second fight, he should fight Tim Tszyu. If he wants to move up to the middleweight division, he should fight Tim Tszyu, because Tim Tszyu will have the belt that they're stripping Jermell Charlo of. Now, if Crawford and Tim Tszyu fight, that will be a mega fight as well. And if Crawford beats Tim Tszyu, I honestly think he will. I think it's going to be a Terence Crawford and Jeff Hornacek all over again. I'm not saying that Tim Tszyu is not better than Jeff Hornacek. I just see the same outcome. That's what I see. If Terence Crawford beats Errol Spence, moves up to 154 to fight Tim Tszyu, because, Jermell Charlo will be tied up in a rematch with Canelo. Should he beat Canelo in the first fight, that will be a good alternative for Terence Bud Crawford. If he doesn't take the Tim Tszyu fight, he should be fighting Jaron Boots Ennis. Right? You have to agree with that. If he is not fighting Tim Tszyu because Jermell Charlo is tied up, he should be fighting Jaron Boots Ennis. And I don't want to hear nothing else. I don't want to hear nothing else. End of story. But that's all I got right now. I will be back with some more boxing news for you guys. But in the meantime, between time, enjoy the sunshine. Peace. I'm out.